Hello, everyone, and welcome to our engineer interview with Anne-Marie Imafidon. My name is Scott, and I'm your host for today. Before we start, I'd just like to say thank you very much for signing up to this year's competition. For those of you who don't know, this is the Leaders Award competition, where we ask the question, if you were an engineer, what would you do? Pupils from the ages of 3 to 19 anywhere in the UK can join, and every single person who takes part receives a named and graded certificate from a real-life engineer, just like the ones we interview. Now, during these interviews, we're going to be speaking with engineering professionals who work on loads of different projects, all of them showing the wonderful, interesting and exciting thing when you work in engineering. Our special guest is going to start with a presentation all about the amazing world of STEAM and data, and then we're going to open up to the audience for questions. If you do have a question, please type it in the chat and along with your school name, and I will during the Q&A. But that's everything for me. I'm now going to hand over to Anne-Marie, who's going to start her presentation.
Thank you so much, Scott. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Anne-Marie Imafidon, and I'm really, really excited to be speaking to you all leaders under this primary engineer program and competition. And I've called my talk STEAM Mode On, and we'll get on to what that means in a second. But I love all things STEM. And when we talk about STEM, I'm sure some of you will have heard this and seen this. Of course, this is a STEM competition. We're talking about science, about technology, about engineering and maths. And there are lots of different subjects at school that I remember we studied and we got to have lessons on, and we worked with our teachers and different projects on, and also had homework on that spanned lots of different subjects. So whether that's biology and chemistry, which you might end up doing when you're at big school up in secondary, or physics, whether it's maths or even computer science or ICT. But you've also got fields like medicine and of course engineering that you might not have had a lesson on, but actually, will eventually end up being something you might choose to do, to study, or to pursue when you're older. And I think it can be quite helpful actually to think about the fact that these might be separate lessons, but in the real world, all of them end up coming together, merging together in some really, really exciting ways. And that's why we have the banner of STEM, but we also have a wider banner of STEAM, which, like I said, I'll come to in a second. So a little bit about me and how I've ended up on this pathway to STEM and STEAM. I think it's always nice to include photos because then you remember that, yeah, I didn't always look like this in a little screen beaming into your school. I was a little girl there. That's me with my little sister. I don't know about any of you. I think that dress looks awful and I didn't like my hairstyle like that. But sometimes your parents dress you up in ways you don't like. And then that's a photo that people around the world get to see all the time. So it happens to the best of us. And in this first photo, I'm about 9 years old. So I did lots and lots of maths and really enjoyed maths. And what's great about maths is there's always more. And it's been going on for so long that there's hundreds of years of maths that you can explore in different kingdoms and different people that have done different types of maths over the years. But also there's new things that we're still trying to explore and understand using mathematics and within the field of mathematics. So I love maths, but I also love technology and being on the computer. And so that takes us to this second picture here, where I'm in year 9, roughly. And that's me there in the middle in my school uniform, which again, I always love to show this photo because I hated my school uniform. So I love the maths, I love the computer science, I love lots of subjects, but I had to wear a kilt to school every day. And I know lots of you might have kilts that you wear at home, but us having to wear one in London at my school, I really didn't like it. But it's nice because every morning I get to wake up now. I don't have to wear my school uniform, but I do get to do lots of maths and technology, and lots of that gets to stay with me. This third photo that I have here on the slide is me graduating from university. And as I've mentioned, I really like maths and I really like ICT and computer science. I actually went to a university called Oxford University that some of you will have heard of, may even got to visit, or might have seen on TV or in films. And I had an absolute, I had lots of fun doing a master's in mathematics and computer science and continuing that on from what I'd chosen as a little girl. That was still something as a young adult that I was able to explore and do even more maths. In fact, I think I almost actually ended up doing much more computer science than maths on my degree, because I was like, I should try something new and move across, and did all manner of lots and different things that was super exciting and new. And then the last photo is me as an adult. And so there was a This is me actually in an article in The Guardian, in a newspaper, getting to talk about my career in technology and all the choices that I've made or had made up until that point. And I think what's exciting and what I want folks to understand is that life is all about choices. And when we say talk about STEM and talk about maths and talk about all the other subjects, maybe your thing is biology or English or sports, I think what's exciting is that there are so many options that you have within these subjects, and where sometimes it can feel like, oh, if you just do maths, it's narrowing. Actually, I found that choosing maths and choosing computer science and IT and STEM subjects has opened up the world and opened up possibilities rather than closing things down. And so I like to call this my kind of weird and wonderful life that has now happened as a result of pursuing those subjects and having an interest in those things. So I've got to do some things that you might have imagined, and I've got to do lots of things that you might not imagine. And that for me in primary school was definitely not part of any plans I would have ever had or ever drawn for myself. So whether that's having a podcast with a newspaper that we've got here in the UK, in London, whether that was meeting Her Majesty the Queen at Buckingham Palace to talk about technology. She had 300 of us there at the palace to talk about technology, whether it's writing my own book. And I wonder how many of you would like to be an author or publish a book in the future. And that wasn't something I'd even thought about, but I've got to do that in the last couple of years. I've even presented a TV show called Countdown on Channel 4, which some of you might get to see and watch when you go home with your parents. They've got numbers and letters. And it used to be Carol Vorderman for the teachers that are there. Rachel Riley took over from her. And then when she went on maternity leave, I did about 60 episodes of doing the numbers and the letters, standing in for the arithmetician on Countdown. The other thing that I've done up here, which is partly why I'm here with at Primary Engineer, is I also am the Chancellor of a university called Glasgow Caledonian University. So I don't know how many of you are up in Glasgow, up there near us in Scotland, but I'm also the Chancellor of a university. So when people graduate, I'm the one that has the big hat, and I get to wear this massive robe that you can see there, and I get to, confer degrees on people and celebrate all the work and the studying that they've done, not just in STEM, but in all manner of different subjects. And so for me, I think it's an exciting one. It's definitely a story I want to let you all know, is that actually when you study these subjects and when you make these choices and when you have things that you like, most of the time, actually, you probably can't imagine all the choices and all the options and all the weird and wonderful things that you're going to end up doing. And I don't know, I still think I'm quite young. I'm not as young as all of you here, but I still think I'm quite young. And there's lots of more things that could even happen with more of the technology that I'm exploring and that I'm tapping into and learning about lots of the maths, the computer science, and the wider STEM. So bringing biology and physics, engineering, medicine, all these other things that I wouldn't have done before, but because they all weave together, it's been really, really exciting to explore some of that. So I wanted to give you a couple of examples to kind of bring this to life, because I know you've got the competition. And so just to give you a little bit of inspiration from things that I've seen as I've done my work. And then I wanted to give you kind of 3 more reasons why this is something I love doing and that I've got to enjoy doing in my career. So the first example to show you is something called BRAD, which is the Berkeley Ridiculously Automated Dorm Room. So this is someone who's at Berkeley College, which is a university in the United States of America. And they have combined lots of different parts of STEM together to automate, so to make it automatic, their room that they have at university. So they've got a homework mode where the light on their desk goes on and they can do their homework. They've got a sleep mode where the curtains close and their alarm goes on. And I'm going to play you now. They've got an emergency party mode that they've built. So they hit the big red button. We need a party, emergency style. You can see the curtains close, the lights go off. And then we've got strobe lighting. We've got a playlist ready. My absolute favorite, got a disco ball there in the ceiling. There you go, ready to go. And my favorite is that they also have a fog machine ready as well, because what's a party without fog? And I love talking about this when I go into schools, because there's so much space you have at schools. I'm sure that your STEM club or someone would love to have this as a project you do across a term, to build a BRAD at school, even if you're not, and if you can't do that at school, maybe you want to build a BRAD at home. Secondly, I've got robots. So this is robotics. And there's lots of different things that we're getting robots to do now. These are dancing robots. At a big education conference a couple of years ago called BET. And if there's any teachers here, I'll be at BET. So see you at the end of the month. But this is a robot that someone has programmed to dance Gangnam Style. I don't know if any of us remember that. Dancing Gangnam Style. So the robot's going there, it's doing what it needs to do. And of course, we get robots to do lots of different things for us these days. Mostly not dancing, unfortunately. But actually, there's lots of things that we can program them to do. And not all of our robots are physical robots. I know some of you will have heard of things like AI. We've got a load of robots and different technology that we're using to do things for us that might not be physical. And I wonder how many of you, if you could have a robot, what you would get it to do. What is their problem you get it to solve? Maybe not just doing your homework or washing up the dishes or tidying up at home, but what other things might you get a robot to do? So that could be something that you explore and have as part of your competition. One other competition entry, one other example that we get to play with quite a lot, you can just about make it out here. This is a 3D printer. And here at the top of it, just about, you can see a little green ring, and that's a bracelet that's been designed and has been printed. And so this is a 3D printer. So you normally have 2D printers where you kind of do things flat, just normal shapes. 3D means you've got it physical, so you're able to hold it, and all the stuff you can see on the table, all of this has been printed. You've got a cup there, you've got a lemon, a juicer as well, you've got lots of different toys. And I always think it's fascinating, the different things that we can 3D print. I've seen folks 3D print chocolate and 3D print pancakes and food. We've seen folks use it for building houses, so 3D printing bricks. Imagine you take a 3D printer to the moon and you can print another 3D printer, then you can print a house maybe, or the materials. Thinking about biology, I've also seen folks 3D print prosthetic arms for folks if they've lost a limb or had to have some amputations. And if you can even, because you can print lots of different types of materials, even printed animal cells, and helped us to 3D print new hearts and new organs for people. So if you imagine you kind of do like a heart transplant, rather than having to take it from another human being, it's something you might be able to print someone a heart that fits the right shape and is the right kind of cells and all the rest of that kind of bits that are important. So I'll stop there on the video, but I'm hoping there's a little bit of inspiration for folks there. And so I think for me, what's really, really exciting and something for you to kind of keep in mind, not just as you choose whatever your STEM career might be or whatever your career might be in life, but also as you think about your competition entry, is that there are so many problems that there are to be solved. I don't know how many of you like to be helpful or like to solve problems. I'm hoping there are no evil geniuses that like to create problems. You shouldn't listen to anything else I'm going to say. Forget everything I said if you're an evil genius. But if you're someone that's helpful, likes to solve problems and not to be the problem, then fortunately that's what STEM and STEAM are all about, right? It's so, so important to consider the way that we can apply the knowledge that we have and explore new things and then solve problems. These three girls have entered a competition of their own in a country called Nigeria, and there's actually 4 of them in the team, but one of them was taking the photo, and they've got down here on the floor something they've created that solves problems. And it's actually, I don't know how many of you can make out the words on the machine. It turns, I think, a liter of urine, so a liter of wee, into 6 hours of electricity, which is fascinating to think, right? That a lot of us go to the loo a lot, right? A lot of parents have big electricity bills at the moment. Imagine solving that as a problem. And that's what STEM is all about, taking this knowledge and new understandings of the world and concepts and knowledge that we have already, and then being really creative and solving problems with it. So number one, if you want to solve problems and help people, this is a fantastic set of choices for you to make. Number 2 is that it's incredibly creative. And this is where the STEAM bit comes in. And I wonder how many of you would say that you're an artist or you're artistic, perhaps, or you like English or those subjects that are seen in that kind of way. And I think a lot of times we ever think, you're maths or you're English or you're maths or you're art or you're sporty, and you can't be all of them. Whereas actually what's fascinating and exciting is that, if we look at STEAM, which is the STEM and the arts together, there's so many more exciting things we're able to make when we get really, really creative, when we let our creative juices flow, when we're collaborative and we work with people. But also critical thinking is a big part of art as well. When you see something, what do you think it is? Could it have been done better? All of those ideas are things that we definitely need in the STEM world. And so at my organization, STEMettes, we talk quite a lot about STEAM and how do we bring music into what we're doing with STEM. And so that might be something you want to think about. Where does music meet technology? Where does sculpture or art or storytelling meet engineering? And that might be something you want to think about in your competition entry, but it's definitely something that is giving us fantastic careers coming up. We've got someone who's a dancer who's been able to understand how her body moves, and that's now part of the technology that we use when we do things virtually and we do things hybrid. And she's only been able to do that because she understands the movement of the body for us to then be able to translate that into technology. So if you're a dancer, if you're into music, any of those things, then we really, really want you to be a part of the competition too, and match that up with technology or engineering or maths and understand a little bit more about the world and help all of us be better and more creative and artistic. And then the final example that I've got here, one version of number 3 is you can wear what you want, which I always like to put it because I really didn't like my uniform. In primary school, I had to wear yellow and green. I don't know how many of you are wearing yellow and green. I know I'm wearing green today, but not with yellow. But actually, it's that you get to travel quite a lot. And so I'm quite fortunate. The year's only just started. So I've only been to India so far this year, but in any given year, I get to travel all around the world and talk to people in. Last year, I went to Panama, I went to Kenya, I went to the United States, I was in Stockholm, lots of different places I get to travel to because these concepts are all global and they're all worldwide. So I think that's the other thing I want you to keep in mind is a lot of your ideas, they might relate to you in your village or in your city or in your school, but there are lots of people around the world that might be in a similar position, right? Or lots of people around the world that might also be affected by that. If we look at the fires that are happening in LA at the moment, that's all climate change related. And so I really want you to think as well globally. When I went to Panama to talk to them about telecoms, or when I was in the States talking to folks about medicine and technology, all of that still comes together. And it's nice for us to apply our knowledge that we've got here and think actually about the wider world rather than just ourselves to be able to solve those problems and be creative in a big way. So that was a little bit about me. I only had 10 minutes and there's lots of things that I've done. I'm hoping that spurred some questions for you all and inspired maybe quite a few of you for your projects. But any other questions or any more support you'd like, I run an organization called STEMettes, and we work with girls and young women and young non-binary folk and their brothers and others. So would definitely love to work with any of you and have you along and maybe, you know, work on some of your projects as well for the submission, because I know the deadline's coming up. Was it April, Scott, that you were saying it's coming up?
Oh, yeah, so we'll be seeing some clever engineering ideas very soon.
There we go. So yeah, would love to be supportive and help you all out. So let's do some questions.
But I've got the first question for you, Anne-Marie. You've done lots of very interesting things, but what do you love most about your job?
What I love most about my job is that there is lots of variety. So on any given day, because I have more than one job, right? So I get to do so many different things in all those different jobs. So I love the variety, but the other thing that I love is the change. And I think, you know, as you'll know, and you'll see across the competition, and if any of you get to see the news or even talk to lots of different people in the world, there's lots of different problems and things that we should be doing better, right? And ways that we could be helping more people. And what I love is that in my jobs, I'm able to apply STEM to help people. And sometimes that's helping countries, sometimes that's helping schools, sometimes that's helping young people, sometimes that's helping companies, sometimes that's helping universities. But it's really nice when you help someone and you get to see a change that then happens that's outside of you, like what it was that you did, right? And so for me, that's always something that's always driven me, that I've always loved, right? And math is full of problems, and I know sometimes it feels like, why did somebody go to a supermarket and buy so many pineapples? But you know, you can apply those to people who really do have real problems, and it's really nice and satisfying to know you've solved something properly because you've used your STEM knowledge.
I like that. Sounds like helping people is one of the things you love most about your job. That's pretty cool. So we've got loads of questions coming in. I'm going to start asking some of them out from the chat. This one comes from St. Teresa's School in Kent. They would love to know what your favourite invention is and if you've ever invented anything.
Oh my goodness, no easy questions here. My favourite invention. Oh, I don't know. That's so hard. I can't pick one. At one point, a couple of years ago, my favorite, because I used to have this on my slides, but it's not anymore. My favorite invention, I had a fitness tracker that helped me know my sleep and how well I was sleeping and how many steps I did in a day. And I absolutely loved it. I don't know, maybe the dishwasher. I really don't like washing the dishes. Yeah. So the dishwasher is my favorite. I don't know if that's boring, but yeah, I really don't like doing the dishes. And the dishwasher has meant that I don't do the dishes.
No, I'm on board with that. I like that. So we've got some more questions. I love this question, actually. This one comes from Bella. Hi, my family's from Kenya. What did you do when you visited Kenya?
Oh, I did loads of things. Kenya is amazing. Kenya is like Wakanda for me. It's my favorite place on earth. I either will live in London for the rest of my life or I'll split half my time in Kenya. I went to Nairobi, so I got to see the science center. I got to meet lots of people working on technology globally and for across Africa. And they've got something called M-Pesa. Bella will know because she's from Kenya. In Kenya, they don't use cash that much. So they've got something called M-Pesa, which is like mobile money is what it means. And so it means that everybody just uses their phone to send money. So if you're on the bus, you use your phone to send money. If you're in the supermarket, you use your phone to if I went to the beach in Kenya, it was beautiful on the East Coast. And even on the beach, if you're buying like a necklace or something from the people on the vendors on the beach, you just use your phone to send them. And it's incredible because it means that you don't have to have cash. You just need battery, and they have that. And they've got really good phone signal as well everywhere in Kenya, better than we've got in the UK. So I'd spend a lot of time spending money on M-Pesa in Kenya, but also talking to local technologists about how we're solving problems actually again, across using technology in Kenya and across different countries in Africa.
Wow, brilliant. Yeah, that sounds like a great trip. So we've got some more questions coming up. This one comes from the Zebras in year 6, and they want to know, who inspires you now and who inspired you as a child?
What an excellent question. So I've got lots of people that inspire me. One is someone called Gladys West, who was a mathematician. She grew up on a farm and she didn't really want to stay on the farm for much longer in her life. So she learnt mathematics and she ended up doing so much maths that, you know, the blue dot that you follow when you're navigating, or that your parents or people that you travel with might follow when they're on Google Maps or Apple Maps or any of that. GPS, some of you will have heard of. She did the maths with the triangles. That means that we can use GPS every day. And I got to talk to her once, and I was calling it the Gladys positioning system, but she said, don't do that. So I won't do it. But Gladys West is one person that inspires me. And one other person that inspires me is someone called Stephanie Shirley, who some of you will have heard about World War II. And you'll have heard of kinder transport. So children weren't safe in different countries. So they got sent on trains to come over to the UK. And she came over, and she was a mathematician for the post office. And she was working at a time when it was very, very different. And they used to say if you had children, you weren't allowed to work anymore. And she didn't think that was very fair. So what she did was she set up her own company, and she gathered lots of women who had been told they weren't allowed to work anymore. And they did their maths, and they did lots of things, like they did all the train timetables, they did stock control for different supermarkets, they did the flight receiver for Concorde, which was a really, really fast plane. They programmed all of these things from their kitchen tables in the 1960s. And I know our parents do that now, and lots of people work from home now, but they were doing this in the 1960s. And she did so well, and the company was so huge, and they made a whole load of money, but they got all these people back into work and allowed them to keep doing maths. And she inspires me incredibly, and I'm really, really lucky as well to get to know her. I count her as a friend now. She's in her 80s. I was at her 85th birthday party last year, and she's incredible, and she inspires me because she did that at a time it was really hard. These days you're allowed to continue working if you have children, and there's so much more that we're solving, but she was able to do that at a really hard time. I don't know what I would have done if they said that to me. I probably wouldn't have gone and started a company and done it anyway.
So we've got a few more questions left. This one comes from Batchley First School in Redditch. How old were you when you first started thinking that you might be able to pursue STEM as a career, not just a subject in school? Oh, sorry, Anne-Marie, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'm on mute. I said, great question. I was 13. So at school, we had to do in PSHE or citizenship, we had to do a careers survey and answer lots of different questions. Do you want to work outside? Do you want to work with animals? Blah, 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 blah. And it gave me 2 things that I should be when I grow up. And one was a management consultant and the other one was a systems analyst. And I read up what they did and how much they were paid. And I thought, yes, thank you. And I actually didn't know what a management consultant was, but it told me. And so I read it and I thought, I can be a management consultant for Sainsbury's. I remember thinking this, for Sainsbury's, and it'd mean that maybe I could get all my food for free and then I could keep my salary and just spend it on things that I wanted to spend it on. And so at 13, I read into it and I saw that, if you studied STEM subjects, so I could use technology as a management consultant, and then I could do that for Sainsbury's, and then I wouldn't pay for groceries and I could pay for anything else on holidays that I wanted to. And so that was what I decided to do. Fun fact, I did not end up as a management consultant, but my best friend is a management consultant, not for Sainsbury's, and she doesn't get free groceries. So there you go, folks. Like I said, things don't always go to plan.
But they keep the doors open, just like you said, which means you get to do even more exciting things. So we've got a couple of questions that were sent in by some schools I wanted to ask. First one is there anything surprising about the world of data we might not know?
One thing I think is surprising about the world of data is that there's a lot of data that gets collected and there's a lot of data that doesn't get collected, and people don't talk about it as often as they should. So there's lots of things we know and lots of things we have and lots of things we don't. I'll give a good example. I'll give one example. When my best friend got married, she had to write into something called the marriage register, which is what you have across the UK, the different nations, and you have to write in your name. You have to write your parents' name, and they used to only, when my best friend got married, they only asked her what her dad's job was. And they asked her husband what his dad's job was, but they didn't ask for their mum's jobs. I got married a few years ago, and they changed, the government made a change during COVID, during the pandemic. So now we have to, they ask you your occupation, the name of your parents, and the jobs of each of your parents. So that means that we've got this massive marriage register, which if you've ever watched Who Do You Think You Are, that's the one that they go through, right? And they check. And from just before the pandemic to the beginning of time, we don't know what anybody's mum did. And so that's a big bit of data we just don't have. So if that's the data set that somebody's using to make some decisions or do statistics or whatever, that's something we don't have. And there's a lot of data that we don't have. There's a lot of people that we've forgotten existed, or a lot of questions that we didn't ask when we collect data that actually would be really useful. So I think it's something we should always keep in mind that's surprising is what is missing in our data, and how are we going to make sure that we think about that when we then want to make decisions using that data, because there's a lot of data that we have missing, even though there's lots of data that we now have.
Yeah, you're right. You never think about that you don't have. Also, that's really interesting. My grandmother loves talking about her job when she was 17, and I've never thought about the fact that that would only be recorded by the fact that she's told me.
Yeah, or it'd be in the census, but it won't be on the marriage register. So it's and so you've got different data bits that are missing different things. So you keep that in mind.
So we've got a few minutes left. If you do have any questions, please throw them in. There's still plenty of questions in the chat. I like this one from Peterhead Academy. They would like to know what advice you would give to somebody interested in becoming an engineer, and what field would you recommend?
Oh, I can't recommend. That's like saying what chocolate or what sweet or what food would you recommend for dinner tonight? I don't know, whatever you fancy. I think my advice to someone interested in becoming an engineer is that there are a lot of different options that exist and lots of different options that don't exist if you do want to become an engineer and you're in primary at the moment, because there's always new fields and new elements coming up. One example would be, by the time you leave primary school or by the time you're working, 6G is probably going to be a thing that there are jobs in. But today, there aren't many 6G jobs because that's not something that they've figured out and that they've completely sorted out. So my advice to someone interested in becoming an engineer is look for all the opportunities that you can to find out what they do and why they do it and how they do it, and keep your eyes on the lots of different options. Keep choosing what you're interested in. Keep choosing things that you see in common of all the people that have become engineers. But I think also keep an eye on the problems that you want to solve. And engineers are all about solving problems. And you'd be surprised how many problems people haven't noticed or haven't seen or haven't thought about yet that actually we need an engineer to do. And I think it's so exciting for yourselves that you can look at the world, all those different problems, and there'll be something you spot that you might be the first person or the second or the third person. And who knows, there's probably lots of you on the call here that will be discovering new fields of engineering that actually means you don't have to copy what the adults have done. You do your own version.
I think that's some great advice, but especially the bit about there's jobs that will exist by the time people watching this leave school that don't now. I'm quite excited thinking about that. So just looking at the time, I think we've got time for one more question, and I may have saved the hardest question for last, Anne-Marie. This comes from Miss Blanford's class. In your presentation, you told us all about the amazing things that you've done throughout your career, but what was your proudest moment?
Oh my goodness, my proudest moment. So we... okay, I'll give it. This is my proudest moment. I did a lot of maths when I said, as I said, when I was really young. I did so much maths that I had 2 GCSEs by the time I left primary school. So I had a GCSE in maths and a GCSE in ICT. And by the time I went up to Oxford, I was 17 when I went up to do my master's at Oxford. So I was very, very young when I did all of them. And when I tell people that, they're always shocked and surprised and always think I'm a genius. And I say, maybe I'm a genius, but actually maybe I was really, really fortunate and had lots of opportunities that I was able to take advantage of. And so one of my proudest moments is I run an organization called STEMettes, and we don't do GCSEs, but we do have opportunities every half term for young people to come and join our programs and get to do things that you would say are for geniuses to do, like learning to code in Python and getting Python certifications, or doing Agile, or working in cyber. And they get to do these, they get to submit these projects, get these exams, and they are teenagers, but they are doing things for adults and they're passing them. And we have about 100 people every year that come through and do those programs. And we don't say, are you a genius? Or what did you score in your homework? Or what did you get at school? We say, hey, do you want to come and spend half term with us and eat some food? Sure. We'll show you the Agile and we'll figure it out. And my proudest moment, we've been doing it for years now, but my proudest moment was the first cohort we did when we got to the end, and there were 15 of them that did that Agile certificate. And this whole time I've said, I'm not a genius, I'm not special, I just had the opportunity. And these young people had proved that, yeah, if you give people the opportunity, they will surprise you. And you never know how many people could be doing those GCSEs and passing those certifications or being those engineers that don't look like what you think a genius should look like. And so that's one of my proudest, my problem was tearing up. It's one of my proudest moments, because there's so many people that think people can't do things, and it's not fair and it's not nice and it's not true. And so I think that's one of my proudest moments, is whenever I'm able to open up those opportunities to help people, but I think even more so to help them, so then I know it's not just me that was special, but actually everybody's special.
That is an unbelievably great story to end this interview on. I would like to say a massive thank you to everyone for joining us, but a huge thanks to Anne-Marie for speaking with us today and inspiring all the engineers in the making out there, because now it is your turn to come up with your own engineering ideas. Remember, and send them to us once you finish, so we can get a certificate sent out into you. And we're looking forward to seeing you all at our public exhibitions at the end of the school year. We've got 25 regions. We're going to be hosting them locally around the country. Our service delivery team are on hand to support any teachers during the competition. So if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Caitlin, Jess, Jenny, Louisa and Josh are there to help. But I would just like to say a special thanks again to Anne-Marie for joining us and helping inspire the engineers in the making out there. And remember, everyone, if you were an engineer, what would you do?